Mabuika, greetings, salutations, and good now. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevis Major, doing it major. And in this video, we're going to be doing a thorough, however brief, weekly forecast for this week, the 27th up until the 2nd of August, the 27th of July up until the 2nd of August. Now, there's some major happenings, man, major placements, major aspects, and we're here to cover it. We're in the Leo season. It's the 27th of July today, so we're about 7 degrees into the Leo season. So go Leo, go Leo, go Leo. Shout out to all of the Leos who are celebrating today and who are going to be celebrating during this Leo season. You guys are the prime example of what we should do or what we shouldn't do during this season. Now, we're going to briefly talk about Leo and then get into all of the major happenings. So Leo, fix fire, a fixated way of expressing yourself, fix emotions. Leo is the fire, it's the light, it's the expression. You make people feel warm, how you make people feel. The visualization, the imagery, the performance, the creativity, all of that beautiful stuff, you know what I'm saying? However, on the flip side, we know that because it's fixated, or we should be fixated, this is the fixated portion of the summer season. And so we need to be, the magi, the magician, the alchemist, how to use these energies to sustain our astral travel. Now, on the fixated side of things, all of the fixations are going to be affected. However, we are looking more so at the Leos as what to do and what not to do. With the fixated sign, it could go a multitude of ways, right? We know we need to be holding things down. However, we can't be too fixated, right? Because if you're too fixated and you're holding on too much to things, we know that things change, things expire, things putrefy. And so if you're holding on too tightly to something that is fading or expiring, when it leaves you, you are left, in a state of chaos, right? Also, you can't be too cardinal, right? Trying to initiate and create all the time sporadically, just creating and initiating. Nor should we be too mutable and adaptable, changing and versatile before we get results. And so again, the emphasis of you being the magician, the magi, the alchemist, the spiritual guru of your own life, so you could know how to use all of the influences based on your agenda, based on your passion, based on your mission, based on what you want to accomplish in this world, right? You and your spiritual group. Okay, so let's briefly look at the major happenings. We have Saturn station retrograde in Aries that happened yesterday. Today we're gonna have Sun opposing Pluto in Aquarius. Sun is in Libra. Sun is in Leo, not Libra, and it's opposing Pluto in Aquarius. We're also going to have Sun trine in Neptune. Neptune is retrograde in Aries. Sun is sextile in Uranus in Gemini. We also have Moon is going to be conjuncting Pluto retrograde in Aquarius on the 28th, 29th. So that's tomorrow. On the 29th, Venus squares Mars. 29th, Sun also is conjuncting Jupiter in Leo. And on the 29th, we're going to be having the full moon in Aquarius. So we're leading up, or we're preparing for a full moon in Aquarius, people. All right. So we briefly talked about Leo being this performative energy. Leo is, the sun is home in Leo. So it's the king, it's dignified, it's powerful. It's all about expression and this grand stage, everyone being able to share their light and what they have to offer to the world. It also constitutes, raw emotion or this fixated emotion. And so there's a lot of power to the Leos at this point in time. Okay, so let's try to put everything together because we already know Saturn retrograde, Aries, Sun making major aspects to some outer planets, i.e. Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. Venus is squaring off, and Sun is also going to be joining forces with Jupiter. Major happenings this week leading up to the full moon. So let's start off with Saturn retrograde in Aries because this one is going to be major. Aries are going to be going through it, man. And I'm an Aries ascendant, and so I'm going to be feeling the effects and ramifications of this one as well. So we know that Saturn represents time, structure, law, limitations, boundaries, restrictions, discipline, maturity, karma, right, which is the consequences of activities or things you do over a period of time. It also represents the material world, right? And so when we have Saturn in Aries, which is the head, Aries likes to initiate and create new ways of seeing and feeling about the world. It's the beginning, it's the spark, it's the fighter, the pioneer, the impulse, that first, spark out into uncharted terrain to experience and create an identity, right? So Saturn isn't comfortable in Aries for the most part. Now, in Horary, classical, more traditional Hellenistic astrology, there's going to be portions where Saturn might be a bit more comfortable than others, but for the most part, Saturn is cold and dry, whereas Aries is hot, right, and fiery and fast. So Saturn is more patience, structure over time, whereas Aries is about the here and now, the present moment. Saturn wants structure, but Aries wants action, right? Saturn wants, to be disciplined and, everything to be structured and, the sequence and the consequences. But Aries just wants movement and action, right? And so now that Saturn is retrograde in Aries, we're reviewing the beginning, right? We know that the retrograde taps us into the RE energy. Shout out to Dolo, the pilot man, who simplified retrogrades. And so we could just attach RE to most of the actionary words, and we could see how a lot of the influences become a bit more internal as we review, we re-examine, we redo, we reinvestigate, we restructure, we reorganize, we reschedule, you rework your discipline and all of those type of stuff. And so we're not just forging a new identity, but we are taking a step backwards to make sure that, we review all of those things when it comes to the Aries, right? When we take these first impulsive or courageous actions, when we, show up and show out as a leader, how we are identified in the public, how we balance our anger, our impulsive, our independence, just your personal identity or responsibilities, this Saturn retrograde, which is going to be happening for a few months up until around December 10th or so. And so it's going to be a long journey of this internal work, right? So again, Aries is fire. So is your fire mature? Is your courage, discipline? Are you independent in a responsible way? Are you acting with purpose instead of impulse? Can your desire for survival, be transmuted to thriving over discipline, right? So Saturn retrogrades turns a lot of the lessons inwards, a lot of the stumbling blocks, we're going to be realizing that they're not so external, but they're more internal as we begin to, become a bit more mature internally. We're going to skip forward. We could go a lot deeper into that, but depending on what house you have this placement in and how it's aspect in your natal alignment and, the other planets is going to give you an example or a better, example of how it's going to affect your personal life. But for the most part, we are re-examining the structures and boundaries in our life, re-examining the limitations that we've placed on ourselves, and so we can move forward, overcoming those limitations or restrictions that may be self-imposed. Okay, today also we have Sun opposing Pluto in Aquarius. I like to categorize Pluto as the planet of doom, gloom, death, and destruction with the promise of rebirth. Pluto is so far away, right, that when the effects get to us here on Earth, it seems quite catastrophic and maybe a bit destructive as it chinks away at the foundation, testing to see if it's solidified. Leo wants to shine, so that's your individual light. But Pluto in Aquarius seems to signify affiliations and groups, network, systems, things that happen in your community or social movements that you may be a part of, right? Or the collective conscious in some way, shape, or form. And so there's a push and pull between personal light, personal fights, and the collective, right? The groups, the organizations, the audiences, the people, the platforms, stuff that you're attached with. And so this brings a sort of power struggle, right? In relationships, in business, your attention and where your mind is flowing, it may be more self-centered as you want to express yourself, versus being able to see where other people are shining and be able to harmoniously balance all of those energies. Just think about a performance, right? There's a band playing and everyone wants to be the lead singer, everybody wants to be the superstar, right? It's going to be chaotic. Everybody wants to solo at the same time, right? It's going to be quite chaotic. And so there's a sort of push and pull where, we have to balance all of this Leo energy in itself. And then Pluto is down there in Aquarius, beating things down, checking all the associations and affiliations to see if they're really rooted and grounded in, the like-mindedness, right? And this sense of togetherness and unity with forward thinking agenda, futuristic agenda that's going to innovate, the community and also the collective. And so there's sort of that push and pull. For me, I like to look at this as you have to know where and when to shine, right? And let everybody have their time and place to shine as well. And so don't overcrowd the stage. Don't solo when someone is soloing. It's better to listen more than you speak. We got two ears, one mouth. All right, we're going to skip over the trines because trines are seen as more harmonious aspects. And so as Sun is trining Neptune, there's that gift, and it's in Aries as well. Saturn is Aries as well. So there's a lot to do with identity and sparking things into existence and bringing them down into this reality. And Neptune taps us into our dreams, our illusions, our fantasies, and we're in the process of reworking them, right? Reviewing them, reanalyzing them, and seeing, okay, what is possible, what is plausible, what is just a dream and a fantasy, and what are the inspirations that could add to the material things that we're actually doing. And so I need to look deeper to see if Neptune and Saturn are actually going to conjunct in Aries while they're moving around. But for the most part, you know, Neptune could be a bit hazy, so we need to be careful between our dreams and fantasies. You don't want to destroy your dreams. However, you want to remove the illusions and the misillusions and the twisted fantasies from clouding or shrouding your actual reality. Sextile with Sun and Uranus, we're going to be experiencing that beginning from today. Rebellious, sideways, breaking out of the norm, breaking out of conventions, a higher octane of Mercury, and so higher inspirations coming in. So we could do something a bit unconventional, and so we could see that the sextile and the trine or harmonious flows. But if we go too hard into those harmonious flows, it could be seen as chaotic, and so have you ever heard the saying, too much of a good thing could become bad, or too much fun lead to fat, right? So even though we have easy access to, the Uranus energy, right, which could be seen as quite rebellious at times, so we got to be careful there. It does offer us a unique way of bringing or getting our points across at this point in time. Okay, so all of this is leading up to this conjunction with Pluto and the moon, which is also the same time, Venus squares Mars, and Sun is going to be conjuncting Pluto in Leo, also a full moon. How do we squish all of this together, guys? Okay, Pluto and the moon. Pluto and the moon. Something about Pluto and the moon. Doom, gloom, death, and destruction with the promise of a rebirth, not necessarily a physical rebirth. And the moon, a new mode, a new emotion. It reflects the sun, and so it kind of shows us or how we react to people, places, things, circumstances, and situations. So how do we react when it comes in contact with doom, gloom, death, and destruction? All right, so as we build towards this full moon, the moon is going to be, going into Aquarius, meeting Pluto retrograde. Again, moon is emotional body, right? Your instincts, your memory, your internal fluid. And Pluto, power, debt, control, rebirth, transformation, pressure. And so as they conjunct on a full moon, it's going to be quite intense, guys. It's going to be bringing up, a lot of feelings, of fear, obsession, being out of control, tensions within a group setting, just a lot of pressure or things that have been buried emotions. Aquarius deals with, again, groups, affiliations, audience, community, politics, your future plans, collective identity. So how you identify among groups of people, right? And we already have teams of death, destruction, transformation, and so some sort of culmination or climax where this Plutonian weight, is going to bring some sort of destruction or breakdown, right? Some sort of separation is going to be happening, and we know separation goes through a lot of different layers, all the way down where it could be your emotional bodies are separated, and even your lighter spiritual soul astral body could be separated because of the catastrophe that could happen with this conjunction. I don't see anything great happening with this conjunction other than, the shedding away of what's useless, right? What's not productive, what's not sustainable, what's not grounded and rooted in, a foundation that is so solidified that no matter what the most catastrophic situation is, the show or the collective could go on. And so full moon conjuncting Pluto, right? On the opposite side of that, right? So that's happening, don't they? Just on the opposite side of that, we're gonna have Sun conjuncting Jupiter in Leo. Now we know that Sun illuminates, right? It brings visibility, it brings momentum, it brings movement and motion, awareness, light, information. I think someone is crashing out over there. And it's at its brightest moment, right? When it's in Leo, and it's going to be conjuncting Pluto. Now, whatever Pluto touches, it promises to expand, right? So, this Sun conjuncting Jupiter is going to bring expansion, right? Whether good, bad, or indifferent. And so, whether it may be psychological or more emotional, we know that it's in Leo. So depending on what house is in, you may be feeling a lot more confident in a certain aspect of life. You want to be seen more, or you're having, the opportunity to be more visible, visibility, creativity. Jupiter deals with, again, expansion. So you're having faith that things are going to, expand. You're optimistic, you're joyful, and you're actually feeling like you have the energy to do more and take on more, right? And certain opportunities, alignments are happening for you to just expand, right? So whether it is through your leadership, whether it is just through your emotional embodiment of joy and radiating that out, whether it may be, romance, right? Romance coming into your life, or you being able to be more romantic, right? Being a bit more performative, having that, burst of energy and pride, creativity, being generous. It seems like it could be overall a great time, for your personal expansion and expression. However, right, Jupiter promised to expand. And so you may be in a situation that's not favorable, right? You could be going through, some difficult situations, some difficult times. And Jupiter brings more expansion to these difficulties and these hardships and hard times that you're having, right? Where you're depressed, maybe it expands that depression. Where you're not being visible, it expands, that invisibility that you have when you want to, you know, express yourself, but you haven't been practicing or consistently being expressing yourself, then it magnifies you not being able to express yourself. And so, even though we look at it as a benefic, it expands, it could also expand, damning situations as well. That's why it's always important to plant good seeds and plant seeds of productivity, right? And plant seeds that are founded in, productivity. That's the best way I could put it, because in the spiritual realm there's never good or bad, but there's productive and there's unproductive. There's love and creativity, and there's hate and destruction. So you want to be on the positive side: productivity, love, and creation, versus hate, destruction, and unproductive tendencies. And so we could see that again. Moon conjuncting Pluto, that's already some destruction happening there. And the sun on top of here with Pluto, either expanding or destroying, you know what I'm saying, bringing abundance and good fortune, or expanding, your bad luck or your misfortune, while Pluto is down there, busting up things when it comes to your groups, affiliations, and networking. At the same time, up here, so we got a square with Venus and Mars. Venus is in Virgo, and Mars is over there in Gemini. And so it brings tension again, because Venus deals with attraction, right? How you attract things, harmony, love, balance, all of that good stuff. Mars is aggression. So it's actually, brother and sister having this push and pull. We know that Venus is pull and Mars is push, and they're squaring off, right? So we got the square off with push and pull, where Venus is trying to pull in, being more mutable, flexible, adaptable with how we situate our love life, even our monies, where Mars is just kind of chaotic, not really having the best of time over there in Gemini. And so bringing in tensions and conflict when it comes to attraction, our desire, maybe being a bit too critical, or just miscommunicating, right? Venus loves order, right? Usefulness, good health, beauty, quite detail oriented, and so it's a practical sign. Whereas Mars in Gemini just wants movement, words, speeds, details, argument, variety, mental stimulation. And so the square, it's not great, because Virgo wants something practical, where Mars wants something more mental, right? And so there could be a certain clash, arguments, tension, irritation with just small little details. And so you may be right and still wrong at the same time, so you may notice how small details, what I'm saying, could really distort a situation, just like how the small minute ingredients could, distort or mess up a pot. All right, so we need to be careful about weaponizing our observations, right? Don't turn our care into, being too critical or criticizing others. And, let's not start fights just because our nervous systems are feeling out of whack, right? Or we just want movement or stimulation. And so we go and pick on a situation. Remember earlier we talked about being productive, love, and creativity. Okay, so all of this, is happening while the moon is full. On the full moon, I like to just relax and do nothing. So I'm gonna try to book a sick leave so I could do exactly nothing. And we know that, a full moon signifies our emotional body at its fullness, right? We're about to start waning and shedding all of that. And so we are at the climax or the height of whatever we were paying our attention to. All right. And so this is the time where, we get a bit more sensitive, we're a bit more protective of the things that we are about to receive. As the moon starts to wane, we gain before releasing, preparing for the new moon. And the new moons in August are going to be major. We're talking about eclipses, man. We're going to get into that in a different video. But for the most part, this full moon in Aquarius seems to be shedding away the people, places, things, circumstances, situations, activities that don't align with your futuristic goals. There's a lot of things in Aquarius, which is your affiliations, your associations, your network, the systems that gear you towards your future aspirations, right? Of doing something innovative, not the same old. Aquarius fixated here, however, ruled by Saturn, and we have Uranus as like a co-little ruler, and so it's quite unique, quite rebellious, because we don't want to be stuck in the same old, right? We're trying to usher in the water bearer, usher in a new consciousness, a new way of thinking that could create a new emotion, right? A new way of feeling about the world that we're in. Still in the same world, but looking and seeing it and feeling a different way about it. Okay, we're gonna end here and come back in the next video and talk about the eclipses that are going to be happening in August, right? Don't want to overwhelm you guys, because you might have to go back and listen to this video, watch this video again. So during this full moon, the moon is also revealing, right? It's full, it's illuminated, it's sharing all of the light from the sun, and so it reveals whether your personal expression aligns with the people, places, things, activities around you, where you need to stop performing for the crowd or performing for an audience and move towards, a more authentic future, right? Where it's not just about performing, but you're actually being, right? And you being attracts other beings who are being, where you could form that affiliation, that community, that network, that association, so you guys could go forward and, do your thing, right? And so we really need to look at or decipher or discern where we belong in this world, right? Where do we actually fit in? Where do you actually belong? Like, I know I'm just alien, right? Alienized. And so alienated Aquarius is, so I belong with the aliens, right? The astrologers, right? So where do you belong in the world? Where do you stand out? Where do you shine? Look at the areas where you're trying really hard to be accepted, right? Where you're afraid to be your authentic self. Where do you have to force yourself to be different and comply just to fit in, right? And how does your creativity, or how can you use your creativity to shape, the collective or the community that you want to belong in, right? And a real authentic community. Some of y'all just want to belong so much that you go join cults and all type of stuff, you know what I'm saying? It gets crazy in this world. I remember yesterday, I saw the image of no I saw the image of the Cult of Nature bar, and I was like, damn, I used to watch this guy on YouTube, you know what I'm saying? And so there's a big emphasis of, performance and audience, and some people may love the performance so much, not knowing that it's just a performance, it's just a character, it's just an act. It was all a dream. We used to read those made up magazines. Anyway, guys, we're gonna wrap up. This week is going to be heavy hitting. We know that Saturn is in retrograde in Aries, and it's going to be there for a long time. And so this is a time for us to, review our discipline, our identity, our maturity, how we present ourselves, our actions, and how we lead our life and the community that, we are going to be a part of, or your family and stuff like this. We know that Sun is going to be having a lot of different aspects, opposing Pluto, trining, sextiling the outer planets, conjuncting with Jupiter. So it's going to be quite intense. Yeah. And so during all of this intensity, around, self-expression and certain breakthroughs that we're going to be having, we need to be quite careful, you know what I'm saying? Stay protected, because the people, places, and things around you, they might be going chaotic. They might be having chaotic full moon, you know what I'm saying? And you know what happens during full moons, you know what I'm saying? You go do your research. That's when all of the freaks come out. That's when, you know what I'm saying, the vampires, you know what I'm saying? That's the time when we are most sensitive, and our deepest, dirtiest desires, you know what I'm saying, could come to the surface, and not come to the surface in a good way as, oh, I'm fulfilled that my desires are coming through. It comes out as frustration and dissatisfaction and disgust, you know what I'm saying. Go look at the video that I posted when I was yelling for money, you know what I'm saying, oh, money, money, you know what I'm saying. Now I did that in the waxing moon, you know what I'm saying, we were building up. But to do that on a full moon, you know what I'm saying, you look like you crash out. So sometimes you got to time your crash outs and know when to, you know what I'm saying, get a bit more, you know what I'm saying, I don't want to say desperate, but a bit passionate about what you're trying to, manifest or accumulate, right? Guys, be careful, right? Watch your ego, watch your words, relationship patterns, because we know that Venus is squaring off with Mars. Don't seek for approval, right? However, you have to know where and when to shine, right? And, watch how your actions influences the group, okay? And, hopefully the pressure, the intensity that we're all going to be experiencing lead to maturity, right? Inspiration, that opens our heart. And I hope that everyone could get the breakthroughs that we're really longing for, and not just a breakthrough materialistically, but a breakthrough internally as well, emotionally and mentally, psychologically, during this full moon. And so we could, you know what was I gonna say? This guy just over here just arguing and cussing out, right? And I'm trying to block him up, but like his words are just like penetrating my mind. But anyway, all of this light, you know, give us inspiration. Yeah, the pressure that we're all going to be under, turn us into diamonds, right? So we could shine bright. Song for good shine bright. All right, major farewell until we meet or greet again. I said this was going to be short, but it ended up being 30 minutes. So you guys have a lot to digest. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you think. Let me know what you're feeling, leading up or building up to the full moon. And I'll see you guys in the next video.